Good evening, everyone. This is 17 o'clock and it's time for class. So remember, if you come into the class, you should write your name in the chat box and your party of which you represent. Today, we'll be looking at governance and corruption by our facilitator, Mr. Umar Yakubu. So before moving ahead, we'll just give a minute or two before I introduce our facilitator today. Thank you very much.
Okay, he'll be joining soon, Chalia. Just give him a minute.
Okay, good evening, everyone, once again. Our facilitator is in class, and I'll just go ahead and introduce him immediately. Mr. Umar.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I just want to read the bio of our facilitator for today.
Forget that bio,
Umar
please.
Yakubu.
Forget the bio. Let's move. Let's move. You can post it later. We're already 5 minutes late.
Okay, sir.
How many
Welcome, sir.
people?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Just go ahead, sir.
Okay. You have the slides, right? So you
Yes,
control
sir.
from.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I apologize for being late. This is not in my character. And I don't know why the Electoral College decided to put a class on a day that Arsenal is supposed to win the title. You know, today is a day some of us are watching so that we win the title. My name is Omar Yakubu, as you earlier stated, and I'm here to talk about governance and corruption. So could we first just give me a second? Yeah, the first slide, please. Send it to me. Let me control it from here. It's not zoomed. I think you're using a phone. Lisa?
Okay, I'll do that now, sir.
So you're using a phone. It won't. Yeah.
I can send it via WhatsApp, right?
Yeah, I'll say
Or
I've
should it be
received.
via mail? Okay,
No,
okay, all
there's
right,
no time for that. I've received already. So allow
all
me
right.
to. Allow me to share my screen.
Yes, you have the co-host function. You can.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So my name is Umar Yakubu. I'm from the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity. We just changed our name to Public Integrity from Integrity Watch. And I'm here to talk about governance and corruption. So it's actually a short class. We'll just start with an introduction. What is governance? Dimensions of good governance, what is corruption, then the impact of corruption on the good governance we're talking about. Then we'll look at what Nigeria has done so far regarding to combat corruption. I will make recommendations and we conclude. So before I go to the next slide, I like some little participation in my class. Just in the chat box, write in a sentence what you think good governance is. Just 1 minute. Just in the chat box. Okay, I can see Zita Samuel, NNPP with your party, Manasseh Melafia, PDP, Council Abdusalam, NNPP. Some background noise. So can anybody tell us? So Dividends of democracy. Good. Joseph Ibisiki says dividend of democracy. What else? Who else do we have? The same thing. Akirele Peter is saying good governance is a situation where everybody is enjoying the dividends of a democracy, regardless of party affiliation. I like the last one, improve living condition of the people by Chinenye sorry, refers to the effective decision-making process and power management. Good governance entails between response. Good. So I have seniors in this class, so I will disturb you. Good governance is transparent, citizen-oriented, proactive, responsive to the needs of the citizen. I'll take one last one. Seven people effectively, the practice of rule of law. Very strong point. That's right. So you can see everybody knows what good governance is or what it should entail or what the components are. So I will just go straight to what, thank you for all your contributions. Thank you very much. All the definitions are correct. So I'll just take you straight to what the international body says what good governance is. And the first one I'll give you is the World Bank, which says is central to creating and sustaining an environment that promotes robust development through and complements sound economic policies. Because for you to develop, your economic policies must be sound, to serve the needs of the people. Then the United Nations Development Program defines good governance as participatory. Now, these are the elements coming out now. Transparent, as somebody said earlier, accountable, because it's transparency that breeds accountability, effective, equitable, and supportive of the rule of law. So if you look at these definitions here, all of you, when you mentioned it, you already gave us these elements of good governance. So in that way, it ensures that development priorities are based on broad societal consensus, that is through the democracy we're doing, and amplifies the voices of the most vulnerable in resource allocation. Then the last definition I would take is the IMF, which views good governance as a broad concept encompassing how a country is governed, including the economic policies, the regulatory framework, and adherence to rule of law, which the second to the last person, somebody wrote about rule of law, which is very important. Of course, you can see the element of transparency down there in the IMF definition. So the next slide we'll have is what the elements of good governance are and the dimensions of good governance. So now, if you take all these definitions and the definitions the class gave us, about 6 or 7 of them, you find out that they're all encompassed in this way. But what I'm just going to explain here is the logical flow of what entails good governance. So the first point on the left, since we have all agreed to have democracy, we're not in a military regime, the whole world has moved. The first step for a good governance platform is to have credible elections. Now, you cannot have perfect elections, but they must be credible, acceptable, transparent, and reflect the views of the majority. Once you don't have credible elections, all the other components we're going to talk about are likely going to fail. That is just the truth. Because it's not reflective of the will of the people. Now, a caveat here, the will of the people that are voting must be knowledgeable enough, must be aware of what their needs are. Because sometimes we vote through primordial sentiments and we don't end up choosing the right people. So that is something I just as an aside. Because if the people are not well informed on the kind of people they should choose, you find that you end up having bad governance in the long run. If you are voting for people that give you money or bags of rice during elections, yes, it is your choice, but you find that it will affect these other things. So bottom line, elections must be credible. The second point is there must be transparency in party financing. Now, I can see when you put your names, you all belong to different parties, and I'm not affiliated in any way with any party, but most of our parties, there's low level of transparency in party financing. What the data shows and the evidence has shown, even from our center here, is that a lot of the money is from public sector corruption. It's money gotten from government. That's why the stakes are so high. People want to go into government to get there, get resources. They even tell you we're getting resources to mobilize our elections and our party structure, our party members. There are places I know where the party members are on the payroll of the local government. So you see, once that becomes a cycle, there is no way you're going to have enough money to do all the other things you're supposed to do. The third component about the political accountability is asset declaration. Now, we have the Code of Conduct Bureau that says all public officers must declare their assets, but that's not good enough. What is the best practice is they declare their assets, and the Code of Conduct should make those assets public to the domain. Because it doesn't make sense. All of you in this class know one or two people that, let's say, had 1 or 2 cars before he got into public office. But by the time he left public office, he has a new house, a new wife, new cars, new sets of everything, and everybody knows what the salary of a public officer is. At most, you'll be collecting 1 million naira a month, at most. Even if it's 5 million, those things that you have bought could not have been through your office or salary or allowances. So this political accountability is very critical. Once we do, that is why we're always running around in Nigeria. We don't have good enough credible elections. We don't have transparency in party financing at all, is near zero, and our asset declaration mechanism is just, I don't want to use dead, it's just not functional. So that is why the other things we suffer. But let's assume we have these three. Let's assume we're working towards having them in our next elections. The next component is public sector management. Now, this is effective management of resources. It's one thing to have the resources, and it's another thing to know how to manage it properly. Now, managing is not only about looting it. Managing is also about using it, utilizing it for the right things, Right now, an example that comes to mind, I don't know the details, but they're building a super highway for $1x billion amount. Now, the revenue might be there. Let's assume it's even there. But does it really make sense? What is the economic benefit of building a super highway where they're paying so much money, as compensation, and what economic benefit is it going to give? I have not seen it, but from what one has been hearing in the news, it doesn't sound like a lot of deep thinking went into that project. So many things. You have government houses now. I was reading a report by Daily Trust yesterday where the government houses that are spending as much as 60 billion naira a year just to manage the government house. 60 billion to manage a government house. Now that's the budget of more than some states, So it's one thing when the TSA came, everybody was clapping, TSA, the monies were pulled to the center, but what about the distribution mechanism? A lot of money was pilfered through there, sorry. So these are the issues about public sector expenditure. And one critical element about public sector expenditure is that it must be transparent and citizens must demand accountability. What are you spending them on? And another area where the research has shown is that about 72% of public sector corruption is procurement. Now, there's some semblance of sanity even at the federal level where they pretend to go through the processes. There's minimal, adherence to accountability of procurement at the state level, not talk about the local government level. So this is a key area where sometimes you just see our newspapers, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, so billion, and that billion has moved. Where is the mechanism to prevent all these things from happening? We need to ask those questions. The next element of good governance is taxes. And why taxes work is when people pay tax, they have a sense of belonging to that government. But when you don't pay and you feel it's just anybody's money, you don't feel responsible or the need to ask for accountability. Now they're killing us with taxes, left, right, and center. They're liberalizing the economy. You can see there's more interest now. Things are so hard that people have some interest to know where this money is going to. But before, when you were not taxed, you don't really care. So it has its good side and its bad side. At least taxes is an effective way of getting citizens to be involved in anti-corruption activities, because when you tax them, you don't want any public servant to just come and take your money and just leave. Now, the next component is the competitive private sector. Now, this can only happen when you have a very strong public sector, not the present over 1,000 agencies they have at the federal level, duplicated functions, some having nothing to do, overstaffed, redundancy, high recurrent expenditure, waste of resources. When you have a very strong public sector, that is where it will liberalize and free the private sector so that they will do their work and boost economic activity by providing economic incentives, and policies where people will bring in their money. Right now, you cannot have a central bank that cannot control your exchange rate. Today is 1.5, tomorrow is 1.2, next tomorrow is 1,000, then to jump to 1.9. No businessman can plan, no foreign investor can plan. Now, even the portfolio money they're bringing in, the hot money, that is investment in all those short-term investments. It's not really in businesses. They are investing in instruments, but not in businesses, in production issues. So you have to have that. Then you have to have transparency in corporate governance as well. I was with the Financial Reporting Council, where they are supposed to actually responsible for ensuring transparency in corporate governance amongst both public and private institutions. Now, when you don't have transparency, that's why a lot of fraud within the industry takes place. Which you find out there is really no money laundering case or corruption case that you don't find the banks involved. So how transparent are they? Who is monitoring them? What's the central bank doing? They have a whole department about monitoring of financial institutions and other financial institutions. So what are they doing? As long as they are not doing what they're supposed to do, you find out money keeps going out through the system. Then the most important part while we're here, we, the Electoral College, our center, and other civil society, is the role of civil society. We all have to be involved, and everybody is a civil society member, whether in the public sector or the private sector, where you have to ensure political accountability, public sector management, or public sector accountability as well, and even private sector accountability. The way will be more governance monitoring process, will be monitoring how much they spend, what they say they are doing, everything we need to do this, and of course, utilize the media and social media, to put out all this information to the public to demand. Because the problem is sometimes in demanding, people just want to go and get their share and leave. And that happens within the NGO space. They shout a little, once they are settled, they leave. You can see what is happening to the labor sector now, how weak they are in negotiating on our behalf with government. They'll say they're going to strike, before you know it, they'll call off the strike and all those things. And nothing has happened, and government is just taking harsh policies, without due consultation. You just wake up, you remove a certain subsidy. You wake up again, you remove electricity subsidy. Now they are waking up, they are going to wake up probably next week and remove the one on telecoms. Like that. There's no deep citizens engagement because the civil society space is a bit weak, especially the media are doing well. They are doing a lot of things, but the civil society aspect, I think there needs to be a lot of improvement. So now, next is what is corruption? And I'll take a minute again for you guys to just type in what you think corruption is. I've not seen anybody write what corruption is, so are they watching us now much? Corruption is defrauding others what is rightfully theirs. That is true. Well, mostly defrauding, what you just defined is a bit of fraud, but it's when it's public sector resources, is corruption. Extrajudicial or against the rule of law from Akinrele Peter, Oluwabusayo, or Ehizoge APC, abuse of power directly or indirectly for personal gain. Mr. Tukur Aliu, yeah, that's very close to the Transparency International definition. Embezzlement of public fund. Chinayawa. Okay, so let's move. There are different, what are the good? Misuse of power, misuse of public resources. There's one definition I'm looking for. I always like to ask for in class for people to say, but I've not seen it. So let me just say to save some time, private, abuse of public resources for personal or private use. I like to see the element of nepotism, favoritism. We'll always forget those elements that are corruption. We'll always look at money, you know, but when you take somebody because you know that person and the person is not qualified, is one of the reasons we have a lot of problems in the country today. People that are not qualified, but because they are related to you or belong to your tribe or religion or something, you just put them there. So there are different types of corruption, but the safest ones for us to use is the abuse of untrusted power. You have been given power by the people to become a governor, a president, a House of Rep, local government chairman, director, whatever level you have been entrusted with power, and you now use that power for your personal benefit. So that is just the simplest and acceptable definition of corruption. Utilization, the use of entrusted power for private gain. Now, use that power to give contracts to your relatives, to employ your relatives, to steal money for yourself, for your association, whatever. That is just what corruption is, especially when the funds are public. When it's private, now that is more of fraud. But when you take public funds in any way you abuse your office, it is corruption. Next slide. So now, I think this slide, if I ask the class to write what the impact of corruption is on Google, and everybody has this to do. As we're in this class, I'm sure half of the class probably do not have light unless you're on band A. And if you're on band A, you're paying through your nose. That is, you can see the inequality is bringing. There are some people should have light, some should not have. There, for those if you're in this class, I'm sure you're opportuned. You are one of those that are even enjoying. How many people have even access to internet to have this class? Nigeria now, our multi-dimensional poverty index is one of the highest in the world. We're talking about access to healthcare, access to water resources, access to education, high mortality rate, birth rate, you know, all those negative indicators. Nigeria is doing very, very well in those negative indicators, unfortunately. And most of it has been attributed to corruption. So that has just deepened the poverty. And now what happens now is to the third point, where social unrest, because the more there's corruption, the more you erode trust, the more people don't have things to do, the more they carry arms. That is why the insecurity we have in the country has been rising, especially since 1999. Because since the politicians came, they have not really done so well in the effective distribution and utilization of wealth. So you find out that this insecurity we have now, it keeps rising and rising and rising because people do not have alternatives. And until you do, and it is cheaper to fight the corruption than spend money on security. But you find that our security budget rising every year but we don't want to reduce the corruption element. The fourth point there, you can see wasted resources. If you see the waste, in fact, Nigeria, yes, we have a corruption problem, but I think we'll have more of a waste problem. We just waste, government people traveling anyhow. You find out the budget so billion for another amount, nothing is being done, just waste. So the recurrent expenditure is so high, but you can't have all these problems and have economic growth or development. Infrastructure is suffering. Just Lagos-Ibadan road, now look how many years it's taking. How many years did it take? Same with Kano, Abuja, look at how long it's taking. Just road, we're not talking about. Every year now, once the rainy season comes, there are 30 states out of 36 will be flood prone. And you see here in the budget for dams, for containment measures, for things to do, but because it's just not being done, the flood will come, kill people, next day it will happen again. And look at the problem we're having with our forex. The Naira has lost its value. I don't know the percentage now in the last 5, 6, 7 odd years. It has lost so much value, you are struggling to grow. Even though when your dollar loses value, it helps exports. But how can you export when we don't even have light, we don't have steel, we don't have good transport? There are a lot of things to do, but you have to have these other fundamentals, the infrastructure, before you are able to do these other things. And of course, like I said earlier on, most of the insecurity we have, especially at the subnational level, is due to corruption. Now, states are receiving 2 to 3 times what they were receiving before the removal of fuel subsidy, but I don't know how many states here have either increased salary or built more industries. No, the still waste is ongoing. That's why they have 60 billion naira to spend in government house. Instead of using that 60 billion, to fix our schools, to build a factory, to generate independent power and do some other things, And of course, look at the quality of life of Nigeria. Nigeria is hard. There's no doubt about that. Anybody in this class, if it's not hard for you, then I think we should even suspect you. Nigeria is hard. Even for those that have access to the resources, they are complaining. Nigeria is actually hard. So the quality of life is drastically reduced. We have poor access to healthcare, as everybody knows. If you are sick today and you don't have money, to check out, the outcome might not be desirable. So these are all the things. So, and of course, though I'm not a fan of foreign direct investment, thinking that we always have to bring foreign direct investment, there's enough within that if we reduce waste, improve efficiency, in fact, the people will be flying in, to bring their foreign direct investment, not in the sense that every governor is traveling all the time to go and look for FDI. And to even come and bring pure water factory, they don't come. So you have to fix your country. Once you fix your country, you find out people will come. So let's not sound like nothing is being done. So far, from 1999 till date, I'm taking 1999 because it's a democracy. These are the laws we have had to combat this corruption. ICPC is there to combat public sector corruption. EFCC, economic and financial crimes, oil bunkering, fraud, money laundering, financing terrorism. The advanced fee fraud, that's for 419. The Money Laundering Prohibition Act, there's a new act, is now 2022, not 2020, not 2011. The Code of Conduct to ensure that every public officer has documented his assets and declared them properly. The NATI Act is for breeding transparency in the extractive industry. Now look at all the illegal mining that is going on. Nobody has a record. No record about most of the mining is going on. But we're only looking at the oil sector. Of course, the Freedom of Information Act is supposed to assist the civil society participation in getting details about governance. Then we'll have the penal code for the criminal code for the northern and southern parts of Nigeria, basically on criminal matters. So this should be our last slide. We have discussed this class and what are the recommendations. We need to strengthen the current legal framework. We have enough laws, but we need to strengthen them to ensure just one area, that the consequence of corruption should be so high that nobody will want to be corrupt. The way we're legislating life sentence for kidnappers, for rapists and all that, the same should be done for corruption. And you can see, you find out that this thing will reduce. Another component under the legal framework, or to the next slide, is you need to make data open. If everything is in the public domain, particularly on your website, you find out there will be no room or little room to steal anything. Then, of course, we have to enhance public participation in decision-making processes. Whatever thing we're deciding, just don't wake up and decide to do one thing. You have to consult. That is why we're in a democracy. You consult, discuss with the media, discuss with civil society, with all relevant stakeholders, and do that. Then, of course, we need to strengthen our judicial institutions, make them, they are quite independent, I know, are quite independent, but we need to make them more, stronger so that they can, with less, the politicians are influencing them too much, and so that we need to strengthen the judiciary. Then, of course, civil service, I feel we're over bloated. We need to reduce them, streamline them, make them more effective. Then the next one, we need to promote ethics and integrity. We need to promote financial management and audit. And of course, we need to combat money laundering and illicit financial flow. I think this is the last slide. Thank you for your time. And I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for that very in-depth class. We enjoyed every bit of it. So if you have questions, you can raise your hands or put the questions in the chat box and to be well answered. Thank you.
No questions, or they are watching us now? Okay, Ibrahim Jerry.
Okay. Ibrahim Jerry, I've asked you to unmute and ask your question.
Okay, madam, thank you. Okay, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir. On corruption, sir.
Yeah.
That is what is called lobbying. Especially, it has almost been legalized in a democratic system, because this happened even in America and other advanced countries. What may I know the distinction between political corruption and this political lobbying, sir? Thank you.
Okay. My simple answer is they are the same, in the sense that, yes, it is legal in the US. They have the law allows it in the US, where you have organizations that their work is to influence policy. But the spirit of that law is you influence it in the sense that they are doing it for the benefit of people. For example, you can have lobby groups that will influence policy or reduction of tax or improving subsidies in the agricultural sector. And that has helped in boosting the American economy in the agricultural sector. But of course, there's the downside, where the lobbyists sometimes do things for their personal interest. In Nigeria, is not allowed. There's no law that backs lobbying. It's not allowed. So what you can do is engagement. That is all. That is why civil society should not be drawing their funds from any other group apart from maybe from donors or internally where they generate their own money. So that is the difference, because it really breeds a lot of political corruption. It does. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, out of political corruption and political patronage, some people are patronized by these politicians in terms of positions and contracts. Do you think there is any differences between this political corruption and this political patronage?
If you remember my first slide, let me just take you there. Here, I talked about political accountability. Now, from your question, if there's political patronage, that is where the transparency in party financing can never happen. I've already given you an appointment to settle you. So the next thing is for you to get money and continue to maintain the party structure or give me kickback or anything.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Rachel Batty, I've asked you to unmute and ask your question.
Good evening, sir.
Good
Good evening. Thank you so much, sir, for this expository class. So my question is, in a situation where the lobby groups and civil societies and NGOs, which are supposed to be standing up for the rights of the citizens, in a situation where they are being financed and funded by the politicians, what becomes the fate of the people
Yeah, what
which
you
are supposed to represent?
it will result into is just conflict of interest. There's no how a politician is funding a civil society, an NGO or a newspaper, and they will speak against him. There are times I will not mention the name of the newspaper because I write as well, where I'll write an article and some newspapers will just not publish it because there are some politicians behind those newspapers. So that's just what it is. So that is why a strong people that have strong civil society is they are funded internally. Let people come out and fund the civil society. But when you don't have it, it's just not possible.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening,
Okay,
sir.
And thank you very much for that in-depth and very insightful presentation. Thank you. Now, this is my question still on corruption and civil society. Many times in Nigeria, the presidency will make some announcements of probably what they are about to do, or a policy they're about to implement or something. Then some civil society, especially the most pronounced among them is Serap. They would say, you just see in the faces of the paper that will give federal government 7 days ultimatum to reverse that decision or else. Anytime I see that headline, I had or else to read, you give the federal government so time to reverse a policy, or I will now put or else, what will happen? What can you do? So my question is this: why do the civil society not have a kind of foothold to actually influence practically development in terms of policy making, in terms of implementation, execution of even policy? An example of that setup, I know there are quite a number of them, because what we hear is just they make the noise, they shout, they do that, but it's like government does not even regard them. Is anything going on in the behind the scene that we do not know? Are they just like toothless dogs that they have to do it even though they know that whatever they are not going to? So I feel government does not probably just give regard to their input. That's why I shout. So anytime I see such headline, I feel like you are just making noise. There's nothing you could actually do about the government or those people. So I want to ask, why is it like that? Why is it like government does not even regard the voices of the civil society? Or is it that the civil society is so weak that they could not even influence some of these things? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your contribution. And I will draw you back to this slide, if you can still see the slide under civil society participation. And the last bullet point there is inclusiveness. Now, what SERAP is doing, the SERAP are doing extremely well what should happen in a democracy. Inclusiveness means when you're about to take a decision, and I'll take this, the recent one about NEPA. You want to do your ban A, B, C, D, E, and A. What you need to do is you inform the citizens. Not only inform by telling them that, look, we need to, disaggregate this power supply for so and so reasons. Then you now, when you include, the citizens have to agree. Now, the difference between democracy and military regime is in a military regime, you can just wake up and do this. But in a democracy, no. The people have to agree. And the principle is when the people do not agree, no matter how good you think that policy is, you shouldn't implement it. So when you just wake up and just give a policy, and like the example I've given you, Serap will shout. And the first thing they're shouting about is not whether the policy makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Get them right. What they will shout about is who is aware. A minister or a regulator cannot just wake up and just say, or the petrol system, we're buying petrol at, how much was it? 140 naira and 45. You just wake up and say subsidy is gone. Even though the last government, I think they tried to sensitize people, and the next thing is times 4 times the price. That's not democracy. That's not democracy. That's a different democracy. People must be carried along, and people must agree. They must agree that yes, that is why citizen engagement is a critical component of a democracy. The people you should query are actually the National and State Assembly members, because they are representing us. All of us cannot be in Abuja. So when something is going to happen, the National Assembly are supposed to be involved before they agree or pass to a law. But what happens in Nigeria now is, well, after it has happened, the National Assembly will now summon the minister. After money has been stolen, the National Assembly will summon. Where were you before the act? It's not responsible to act after the act. So that's my response to your wonderful contribution.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Okay, I believe your question was answered. So before I move to the questions on the chat box, I'll ask Akirili to unmute and ask his question.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful. I think you have.
I can't hear at all.
Oh my God. Hello, can you hear me now?
I can't hear you, but I can see one question by Ibrahim Mohammed asking about the whistleblower policy law. We don't have a whistleblower policy law up to now. It died. There was just a policy. There was not a law, so we don't have a law. What we had was policy during Shamsuna. It just died a natural death. So I'm answering the question of Ibrahim Mohammed. So we can hear you, but you just need to speak up, honestly.
Hello,
Okay,
can you hear me now?
Okay, we can hear you now.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful. And I think you have answered majority of the question we would have asked in the recommendations. But then I have this question. It's about the departments and agencies we have still on corruption. In a situation where an agency like ICPC, who is supposed to monitor corruption, ICPC and EFCC, when they are corrupt by yourself, which way do we now go? Where do we go from there? And when agencies that are supposed to monitor corruption are being funded maybe by the executive, and how do they checkmate the actions of the executive who may be corrupt? Like, if the executive is funding you, how do you checkmate the actions of the executive who is funding you? What do we do in this situation? Where do we go from there? Thank you.
Yeah, you have a valid point. Where he who pays the piper dictates the tune. That is why the international principle is to ensure that they're independent. That's why you hear, let's say, INEC, they're supposed to be independent. ICPC, they're supposed to be independent, meaning they are not going to be influenced by the executive. So that is a natural concern. So now when they don't use their independence, it's a problem. I agree with you. There are reported cases of corruption within INEC, ICPC, EFCC, and all of that. But that is where, again, the role of the National Assembly, a state assembly, and the civil society comes in. They are the ones supposed to check, because democracy is supposed to be check and balance. Check and balance. So that's the role of the National Assembly and the State Assembly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. We have a question in the chat by Ayi Larry. It says, "Good evening, sir. I just want to ask if there is a way as a citizen, how can we stand for accountability from the public office holders, with the judiciary being influenced by the top politicians and also the law enforcement units?"
Okay, well, one way to do it is exactly what Electoral College is doing: participate. You have to be involved. If you are lying in your room watching Arsenal all the time, yeah, you don't know what's going on. You are not active. Things will happen. You only get to hear them after the fact. Second thing, Electoral College will tell you again, get involved in politics. Now, being involved in politics doesn't mean you have to run for office. If we and those that are supposed to know are not involved, they are not in political parties, they are not involved in during the primary process and all those things will get bad. It's as simple as that. Because without all these things, like I said in the first thing, once you don't have credible elections, everything will crumble. And credible elections start within the party and party primary. So everybody just needs to be involved. I'm sure there's a class on that by the Electoral College.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Bolaji, I've asked you to unmute and ask your question.
All right. Good evening, good afternoon, or good evening.
Good
So
evening.
thank you very much for this beautiful and brilliant and enlightening lecture. So my question is about financial corruption, and I have a question: is that whenever looted funds are being recovered by the EFCC, where do these funds go to, and how is it being managed? Does it go to the, I don't know, where does all these funds, where do they go to? You know, in the past, or since for about more than 8 years now, we've been hearing about the Abacha loot, the Abacha loot, the Abacha loot. Where do these funds go to, and what do they use it for? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your question. There are three categories. When the EFCC recovers money, it will actually be for an individual. Let's say somebody defrauded you. So once they recover that money, they take it back to the individual. The second one is when it belongs to a foreign party. You know, when they say Yahoo boys defraud somebody outside, they take it back to that person. The third one, when the victim is a state. Now, whether it's federal government or state government, the ministry, if it's federal government, all of it, they take it to the central bank. Any monies recovered, so locally, is taken to the central bank and taken back to that ministry or state that it was taken. I'm sure you may be aware of the Alami ACI case in Bayelsa, where they returned the money to Bayelsa, or the one in, which other one? There are a few, where they return them to the states or to the local government. I know some will argue that, okay, after you have returned it, they'll still loot it again, but that is what the law says. You take the process back to the victim. So it's either an individual or a state. That is where it doesn't belong to anybody. So don't listen too much when they say, oh, that the loot has been looted again. No, it's after it has been taken back. It's possible that after they have taken it back to that state or ministry that they will loot it again. For the federal government, usually when they recover from federal government and put it in the federation account, they take it to, or they put it in the federation account and just utilize it. And utilize it for the whole country. That's what federal government, but for the states, you have to take it back to the states. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Kabir, I've asked you to unmute and ask your question.
All right, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, our presenter, our facilitator. Thank you so much for the enlightening presentation. We hardly find questions to ask, but I just want to ask this on a personal ground because I went through your profile. I seem to observe that you specialize in data science, so I do a bit of data science too. So I'm curious on basically how Nigerians can adopt data science to address good governance and probably manage corruption as well in this country. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, the element of data science comes in now. For example, I'll just give you one example out of a dozen. Now, imagine where if I were maybe you should even invite the Electoral College. We're having a program, hopefully next month, on the use of, what do you call this? In procurement. Now, when you imagine where every procurement information about governance is in the public domain, is on a public website and regularly updated. Who did the contract, who it was given to, who took it, how will they tell me how corruption will take place? So that's an element of transparency. That is one. Two, if you let's assume now all public officers, they feel their code of conduct bureau forms, and is in the public domain. The another area that interests you if you are into data science is about blockchain technology. How blockchain technology can be used to combat corruption. Now, if you use blockchain, it will provide a decentralized, public accessible ledger where all transactions can be visible to anybody, and it can be traced because it allows for tracking and tracing of all those transactions. So the money will be taken to. So that's what we're trying to see. One element, make things public. Then the second element, use of blockchain technology, because it will be decentralized and it will be accessible to all. So thank you. I think we'll invite the Electoral College, maybe they invite the students to attend that program because it will even be online. So you see it. Next one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I believe all our questions were answered and class
Yes.
well understood. So it's always a great privilege having you around, sir, and learning from you. So thank you very much for
welcome.
having us this evening. Yes, sir.
Thank you
Did
too.
we have a meeting?
Is that right?
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Your classes are always very educative and insightful. Thank you for always taking out time to be here. I'm sure the students got a maximum value this evening. So I'll just allow them to unmute and say thank you before we call it an evening.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your
welcome.
time.
Thank you, sir.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much, sir.
All right, thank you once again, sir. And well done, Chalia. Well done, everyone. And this will be it for this weekend. Classes will continue next weekend, while your assignments will be sent during the course of the week. So have a lovely week, everyone, and goodbye.